I'm Ifrin. I'm a 17-year-old with way too much to say. And today we will be discussing... Look at yourself for a minute there. Yeah. Today we're going to be discussing the effects of social media on children and why kids seem to grow up faster these days. Spoiler alert, they're not growing up faster, they just feel bullied into a state of maturity that they aren't prepared for. How do I go about this? I don't know, this is a rambling channel, I'll just fucking ramble. I think a lot of people misconstrue children's current, obsessions with, skincare and, social media and stuff that's deemed as, super mature. It's not their fault. It's a failure on their parents and their, elders. And the biggest part of that is people my age who made it, cool and, to be, older than you are. And it is, especially an issue for girls. It's always been an issue for teen girls where they feel like they have an obligation to act older than they are because they're constantly told as an excuse for the behavior of the boys around them. They're told, oh, girls are just more mature than boys. Oh, boys are just immature. Oh, girls just grow up faster. None of that's true. That is indicative of the patriarchy. That is indicative of telling little girls that they need to accept abuse and sexual harassment because men can never be faulted for their own actions. But one of the biggest things about it is kind of the issue of social media. Social media exposed these children to content creators who aren't catering towards kids, because content creators who cater towards children get bullied by people my age and older. Think of it, Collins Key. Really popular when I was a kid. I remember watching him when I was in, 5th grade. But I think it was Danny Gonzalez or Drew Gooden. One of those two. Maybe Curtis Connor. The trilogy of white boys. One of them made a video about Collins Key, and everybody started pounding on them. And I'm not saying that those people are bad people, except I kind of... Is it controversial to say that I don't like Drew Gooden because he posted a video with a Starbucks cup visible, and I'm pro-boycotting? And people, whenever they hear that, they're like, oh, Starbucks isn't, donating money to Israel. I don't give a fuck. They're still anti-union, they still treat their workers like shit, and their CEO is still a Zionist who sued the union for speaking out against genocide. There are several reasons to boycott Starbucks, the least of which is, whether or not they donated money to Israel. I don't care if they donated money to Israel. I care about how they treat their employees, and a lot of people are overlooking that. They're using the genocide in Palestine to justify their whole, anti-union bullshit, which, I come from a blue-collar family. We are pro-union. We are pro-union in this bitch. If you're ever working somewhere and they tell you unions aren't allowed, quit. Quit. Same thing goes for if they tell you you can't discuss your pay, especially if you're American, because I'm pretty sure, is it federal law or is it just my state law? I think it's federal law. At the very least, it's, my state's law, which I'm not saying, because this YouTube channel is public, but I'm pretty sure it's federal law, and it says that you cannot punish employees for discussing their wages. So if your job ever tells you not to discuss your wages and tries to punish you for it, call the cops on them. It's not what the police force does to you, it's what they can do for you. Send an anonymous tip. Let them know. Contact whoever you need to. It's not actually the cops. It's gonna be some form of business bureau. I don't know. It's whoever I should have called when I was working at a Korean barbecue place and they refused to pay me minimum wage or tips. Bitch, I don't give a fuck what your CPA says. I want money. But that's not the point. that there's no third spaces anymore and that America's hatred for homeless people and undesirables like teens and poor people has led to a lack of ability for children to be children. It's no longer like socially acceptable for them to just simply exist as little kids who like little kid things because they are now indulged in social media, which isn't their fault, it's their parents' fault. Get your little kid a phone if you need to, I guess. Get them like a fucking flip phone. Get them one of these. This was my phone when I was like 14 because my mom made some choices. She definitely made some choices. That was my phone for like almost a year. And I worked fine with it. It was my phone for 8 months. I mean, it was inconvenient, but like, womp womp. I was able to text, I was able to call, I was able to access the internet. It was actually a whole debacle because the first thing I did when I got it was figure out how to get on AO3. And my mom asked to see it because she was like, oh my god, I haven't like had a flip phone in person since like your oldest sister was born. And I was like, oh my god. Later. And she was like, no, right now. And I was like, I'm not telling you the password. And she was like, don't tell me the password and I won't give it back to you. So I tell her the password and it was Yowie. It was Yowie. And then she gave me like a long lecture about how it made no sense. Her point was that me at the age of like 13, I think, reading explicit content about two consenting adults, her point was that that was equivalent to me creating and distributing explicit content of non-adults. Which not quite. Not quite. She also called my lesbianism into question over it. She was like, if you're a lesbian, why would you even read about two men? And I was like, because I like the show they're from. And I think they should freak it nasty style. There's so many characters who should freak it nasty style, but that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is that parents and like elder peers like myself are failing Generation Alpha and below by raising them on the internet and not giving them like influencers and third spaces that suit them. Cause you know, you'll see like 8-year-olds where there's no like content creators for 8-year-olds. There's like Coco Melon and then like Tana Mojo. Alright, those are the two sides of the spectrum. You can get Coco Melon and like, not Rainbow Kitten Surprise, Billion Surprise Toys. You can get like Coco Melon and like Baby TV. And then you can get like the exact opposite. You can get like third-rate beauty influencers who are telling these 8-year-olds that they need to cover their skin in hyaluronic acid and like retinol, which is going to burn their skin off. And that's what a lot of these kids aren't understanding because they're not given like proper education on this stuff because they're not being given it through like a proper source. They're being given the information by people whose job it is to sell that. And when they're trying to sell it to you, they're not going to be like, oh, by the way, like, this might, like, permanently damage your skin. They're not going to tell you that shit. No. That's bad for business. And they don't care about the people. They care about the money. If you want, like, good beauty recommendations, don't go to somebody who's telling you what products they're using and, like, advertising them. Go to somebody like Kenny JD, where they do their makeup on screen often and just take snapshots of what products they're using and look into that. Like, I have some products right here. I'm 17. I don't get paid anything. This is all, like, Ipsy bags. Let's see. This eyeliner, NYX Epic Wear, this has carried me since I was 12. Even with my CeraVe cleanser, this takes, like, effort to get off. It's more than waterproof. It's, like, scrub-proof. Boiling water proof. I have like a ton of products that are really, really good. And, just ask the people around you. Look to people who aren't getting paid to tell you what to buy. But these kids aren't being given the opportunity to learn that. Sorry, my dad came upstairs and I didn't feel like explaining to him about how I made a YouTube channel because some of my Yowie Twitter mutuals told me to. The point is, children are being failed by their parents and older peers, and we need to stop bullying children's content creators. Like, yeah, it's funny to make fun of, like, low quality, like, YouTube Shorts humor, but is it harmful? Who are these people hurting by being loud and obnoxious on their own YouTube channel? That's what I do. I'm loud and obnoxious. And it's just like, as funny as it is to make fun of like Collins Key and like, God, what are those? What's that couple? With like the blonde girl and there's like the Game Master, Inquisitor Master or whatever who they're after. Like, people make fun of like these children content creators for making childish content as if their user base isn't children. And then these children feel like they're cringe and weird for liking this content, so they go to content creators who are made for older audiences. And because there's nobody to really guide them on what's like right and wrong when they're like getting all this information, people who are getting paid to give it to them, they sit there and they're like, oh yeah, no, I'm 8 and I need this Drunk Elephant skincare set. I need this Sol de Janeiro set. I need this foundation and primer and all of this. And the fact of the matter is, yes, children are going to want to play in makeup, but there's a line that needs to be drawn. There's a difference between makeup and skincare. And children need to stay strictly on the makeup side. I don't even use that much skincare. I use a toner and a moisturizer. When I have like really hard to get off makeup, I use a 2-year-old half watered down bottle of CeraVe cleanser that my sister left here when she stayed at my dad's house for a week in 2022. And that's all you really need. My skin isn't that bad. I get like a little bit of acne sometimes, but it's not that bad. And that's how life should be. We should all be enjoying our lives and not focusing on how we look all the time. You shouldn't be taping your mouth shut and getting Botox and like lip injections and shit. Like, obviously, do whatever makes you happy, but don't do stuff to look a specific way if that's all it's doing. Live your life. Be fat and wrinkly and sunburnt and like have a bad tan with like ugly tan lines, or it's so obvious you're pale under there. Just live your life. You can have the acne and the wrinkles and the scarring. Just have fun. Love yourself. Love life. And it's just, children don't get that message because they're so young that nobody feels the need to tell it to them. And as the world stares right now, we just don't really as a society live by that much. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm like doing this and doing this and doing this. You don't need surgeries unless you have like a medical issue. And like, obviously I support people who do that because it's truly what they want. But it's so hard to find out who truly wants it and who feels obligated. Somebody could sit there and be like, no, I really want like this nose job. Like my nose, I don't like my nose. I need to get a nose job. And you're like, okay, well, like, why do you want the nose job? And they're like, it'll just feel more like me. And then you ask them more questions about it, and they'll be like, no, but, like, my nose is ugly. I have, like, an arched nose. I have, like, a Roman nose. I have this kind of nose. I have this kind of nose. I want this kind of nose. People didn't worry about that shit in, like, the 1800s. That's, like, a very new, socially manufactured stigma. And that stigma is falling on to children. I have childcare awards. I'm not showing you because it has my legal name on it. But I have like childcare like awards and stuff. The children aren't all right. The kids aren't all right, baby. Listen to Fall Out Boy. Listen to America, like the offspring Americana. The kids aren't all right, and we are failing them. Because we're putting them in situations where they look up to these social media influencers who do not have their best interests at heart, and we aren't helping them. We are bullying the content creators that they should be watching and shaming them for falling down, like, misinformation as if it's not our fault that they access that misinformation in the first place. A lot of people are like, oh my god, the stupid Sephora 10-year-olds. Whose fault is it that they feel like they need to be in there? The blame doesn't fall on them, it falls on us, their parents, their elders, their grandparents, their older siblings, their like teachers. It falls on the older generations to teach them where they should be. And that's not to say like, oh, children are like below us. No. That's to say children have the right to be children. And we are putting them in positions where they feel like they have to be something more. And that is not fair to the children. And people are going to sit there and they're like, oh, well, it affects me. And I'm like, yeah, that's why it's so bad. Because you guys want to sit there and you want to ignore issues that don't affect you. But then once it does affect you, you don't want to admit the fact that it's your fault. It's happening. Children should be allowed to be children. And bullying them isn't going to work. That's the same reason all the like recent attempts to cut back on like vaping and shit has not worked. Because bullying doesn't make people want to stop something. It makes them ashamed of getting advice to get out of it. That's why the stigma against addicts doesn't create less addicts. It just creates less resources for addicts. It's all tied together. America's hatred for homelessness and teenagers, it affects all of us. And social media and the way that influencers and celebrities depict themselves, it affects all of us. And we are failing children by not giving them like a safe space to explain to them like, hey, it's okay to be interested in this stuff. I was at your age too, but like, we need to give them spaces where they can just be kids and not worry about that shit. Because honest to God, my cousin is 6 years old, and she sits there trying to talk to me about like, oh, da-da-da-da-da, did you get this? Did you get this? And it's just like, wow, you're 6. And the thing is that she's not even as bad as other kids. Because she still, like, has fun. She goes to the water park in her little unicorn one piece with her little cat sunglasses, and we play in the Pirates Cove area. Other little kids, like, I went to the water park with my cousin on the other side of the family who's 13. I thought she was my age or older. And the entire time we were there, she was talking about how she was only there to, like, find a date. And she would refuse to go on any ride that wasn't, like, super extreme. And she was utterly insane. And 13-year-olds should not be like that. Nobody should be like that. Let's be honest. We should all be allowed to act like a kid sometimes, but especially the kids themselves. We can't expect them to know things that only a mature group would know while we're depriving them of the guidance of a mature group. We are failing the children. It's as simple as that. I don't really know how to end this video out. Look at this. Hold on. 1 second. Okay, look at this sick-ass frog.